I want to welcome everyone this morning to our Acumatica continued learning event on business events, formerly known as automation notifications. So this morning, one of the things that people ask us a lot about here at Network is, hey, I want that report sent out automatically. Hey, I want to have this updated in the system automatically. And we have found that this is all possible within Acumatica, and what's nice is that the tools are already there. So instead of having us do the work every single time, we want to empower you guys to do it yourself. And so with that, Jason this morning will be going through the business events, aka formerly known as automation notifications. And the goal is, if you have any questions afterwards, please feel free to give us a call or contact us. We are recording this webinar. And if there's any questions along the way, please feel free to put them in the questions box. I will be monitoring those as Jason gives the presentation. So without further ado, Jason, it's all yours.
Thanks, Stuart. Before we hop right into this, as Stuart was saying, this is formerly business events replace the automation notifications. Automation notifications are still in the system. So if you're familiar with them or had some experience with them, they are still there in Acumatica, so don't worry. But this is just the new way that Acumatica is shifting to handle automation within the system. So as always, this webinar is going to be 30 minutes. All the lines are going to be muted. So if you have any questions, like Stuart said, please put in the questions box off the side, and I'll stop a couple times for some breaks to just ask if there's any questions to talk and answer them then. But as we continue on. So the first thing I wanted to get everyone acquainted with, because business events, while it may seem slightly overwhelming, they're pretty straightforward, and I want to break it up into little pieces so we have a better understanding of how this kind of comes together to make this automation notification really effective and set up correctly, because it can get a little confusing. So the first thing that we need to do is set up a generic inquiry and verify that you have the correct data visible to monitor. So a generic inquiry is an inquiry that we've seen every day. This is just an example, part of the demo data, and Acumatica provides a lot of demo data that I've talked about in previous webinars because they're really great to build off of, get some kind of like an ideas of how it can look, and you can even start copying them, tweaking them, and then using them for your business events. A business event, essentially, just think of it as something monitoring this screen and looking for very specific actions to occur for something to happen. So this is one that I'm going to be using. I will show it in depth. This DB case is going to be DB opportunities, but it's very similar aspect. But the first thing before we hop into the live demo and I kind of go a little bit more in depth, I wanted to kind of give an understanding of what I'll be touching and changing. So the first thing on the business event that you'll see at the top is an event ID. That's just simply what is the name that the system looks at it. The next underneath it you'll see is the type, which will be either a trigger by record change or trigger by schedule. So a trigger by record change is simply going to be if something happens on a record that we saw on the generic inquiry, something was new or some piece of information changed, so priority went from medium to high, somebody escalated it, the Acumatica will take a look at that and then activate the notification. The trigger by schedule means it won't go off of a business event, a change. It would just automatically happen on a scheduled time. So that's if you want to kind of group it in, want it to kind of notify you on certain changes, if there were changes, and then run at that specific time. So really two powerful pieces and decisions you have to make early, because that's how ultimately the rest of the event's going to happen. So the raise event, you'll have three options here. For each record, which is each record that satisfies the condition. Once for all record is one business event for all records that satisfy a condition and executes each subscriber once for all of the business events. So it's going to group them, it's going to do once for all the records that had that change. And then a group of records would be the system raises event for a group of things that have happened. It gets a little hairy, it can be at times, but just kind of go back and read through these and kind of see and think to yourself, what are you specifically looking at? A lot of times, if it's just you want something to alert you if a new event happens, in this case, I'm going to be doing if, like, for example, a new opportunity happens in the system, you're going to want to do for each record, because each opportunity that comes in, you want an email to let that person know, hey, there's a new opportunity in there, reach out. But if you wanted to group that together, you could do once for all records. So if a bunch of opportunities come in and maybe you didn't want to have as many emails going out, you could group them there, and so on and so forth. And then the screen name is just simply the generic inquiry, the screen that we were looking at before, what we want Acumatica to monitor and really look at and hone in. The next part of the business event we're going to look at is just the conditions. Now, the conditions are going to be similar for both the schedule and the record change. So these two will be the ultimate deciders, but this will stay the same at the bottom. And the field change is when the value of the field in the result of the generic inquiry has changed in any way. So maybe it went from being pending to, we can see in here we have pending, the pending status. Maybe it was new and then it went to pending customer. We have field value increased. The value of the field in the results of the generic inquiry has increased. We have decreased. We have a new field value, so maybe a whole new field came in. For example, a new opportunity came in and that you wanted to monitor that. And the value for the old field value, the value of the field is checked in the results of the generic inquiry before the date change, something that was really old, and you can set your values of the date range for it to say, oh, this has been sitting here a while. We need to then alert you that it needs to be modified. Then we have record inserted, deleted, and changed, very similar to each other, which is something has appeared, been removed, or modified in a record on the generic inquiry. So now that we have a better understanding about the trigger conditions, I want to talk about the subscribers. And don't worry if you can't memorize this all the first time. I just wanted to kind of give everyone an initial impression, an idea of how this is going to be working before we dive into the live demo. So under the subscribers events, you'll see that we have 4 different options. We have an import scenario, an email notification, a mobile push notification, and an SMS notification. So you can use a business event to say, hey, if this event happens, to run an import scenario, and you could also schedule, this is another way to schedule the import scenario to automatically run at a consistent basis. So you have that option, and then you can select the import scenario. An email notification is what I was talking about earlier for the opportunities, is if a new opportunity comes in, you want to alert the person managing those opportunities to reach out to that customer to then say, hey, and start adding new activities on that case or opportunity, so you make sure that things are not getting stuck in the back burner and not getting attended to for new customers. And then mobile push notifications will actually push a mobile notification to your phone on the Acumatica app if you have that, or you have an SMS notification which will send a text message. And those for the text messages, you have, I think it's called Twilio, and you also have AWS. So those are your 2 options for the services you can use to connect Acumatica to send that notification. The final part that I wanted to talk about, and you've noticed that on this screen we only had trigger conditions and subscribers, and on this screenshot we have schedules. And that's because our first, instead of running by an opportunity or an event, we're running it by a schedule. You'll have this tab, and this tab will allow you to then automatically set up how the schedule will run and how often, and we'll touch on that a little bit further. And we even have some videos up there for automation notifications with setting up a simple report email that's not a business event. So please check out our YouTube channel as well, because we have that there, and I've made a video on that. So do we have any quick questions before we hop right into the demo?
Nope. The questions of there's no questions at this current time, so all yours.
Great. So the first part I want to go in is actually going to a business event in the system. So you can, if you'd like, you can actually just type business event at the top, or event, and you can see it's under system preferences. And as always, you can go to more items, system. You can go to more items, and then you see business event under system preferences and system management, and click on that. And then this is this, oh, sorry.
The one question that did come in, what version are you showing us at this point?
This is 2020 R1.
Perfect.
So this is not the beta R2. That is being released actually very soon. I'm really excited. So the first thing when you hop into business events, and this is similar to 2019 R2 and R1, they had that in there. But on this screen here, we're going to hop into this new opportunity V2. This is something I designed for the demo, and it's no different than creating a new one because I wanted to break it down of how this event is created a little bit further, and showing you how you can set up, in this example, an automation email, because I'm sure a lot of people are trying to wonder how we can set up these automated emails to reach out to people and everything. So the first part I want to jump in after we've looked at the business event and decided is the screen, because the screen is incredibly important, because if the generic inquiry doesn't have the correct information, this business event isn't going to work. So the two things you need to think of is simple and does it have all the information that you need. So in this case, for this opportunity that I want to have the system automatically send an email when a new opportunity is present, we need to make sure that three things are in here. The first thing is that there's a subject and that there is the stage is set up. So we can see prospect here, and that's important because the system's going to need to know if it's new. The next part it's going to need to know from our business event is the employee and the owner of the email. And then the other part, because the business event actually needs to have the email address that's associated with the case to send out the email. And then the third thing we need to know is kind of just a screen that has all the information, just general information for the opportunities coming in, which we have here. And if it doesn't have the screen, or it doesn't have, a lot of times when you're looking in the demo data, and when I was building this originally, it didn't have the email. The emails didn't show up, and you can see here I have the employee email hidden in the generic inquiry. But originally, this was a business event opportunities. I made it net at work because I modified this and I wanted to know for the future. But the employee email is incredibly important because when the new opportunity comes in, and it's being placed in the queue, and then the system needs to know, hey, this has been brought in here. Who's the owner employee that we need to reach out to? So that's why I made sure that this employee email is added. The column is there. And the way that you can determine what where that is or how to get that additional field, I'm going to show you at a really a brief step-by-step, but I also have a video on our YouTube channel as well. But you need to then click into the opportunity here. And this is running on my local laptop, SQL. So if it's a little slow, that's mainly the reason, because I'm screen sharing and everything. And then once you have the opportunity to look at all of the data that we have presented, we're going to find the employee email that we need for this opportunity, and we're going to inspect element. Now, if you are a user on the system and you're not able to inspect element, you need to add the customizer in the user settings. So the customizer role under users. So now that we're in here, I'm going to then look for the employee's email. So you can see, click through here a couple times, quotes, contact info, and then we can see kind of who, you just kind of click through and see who's the owner of the email and everything, and you just check all the different boxes just to make sure. And then we can see here Maxwell Baker's the owner. And when you find when you find the specific contact information for the owner of the of this business event that you want to send it to, the employee's email, you can see here that it's S Church. So we know that it's the owner here. We're going to inspect element, and we're going to know that it's in CR Opportunity Owner ID. So that's the table, and then the field name. So we have the table, CR Opportunity, and Owner ID. So now that we have that information, we're going to store that in our back of our mind. We're going to edit the generic inquiry. And I'm just showing you this so you can add the specific fields to the demo data, because you'll need that for your business events. And you can see here, if we have CR Opportunity tables, the table's already created, and if we, or it's already in the table, so we don't need to do anything else on this except adding that field. And you can see if we scroll down, we have the emails for the opportunity, the CR opportunity, and we have the contact email here. And we also have the contact email is what we need, because that is the owner's contact email. So what we're going to then do is, now that we have the email for our opportunity, we now can refer to that in a future step. So, and I'll touch on that in just a second. So now what we're going to set up is the trigger conditions. And the trigger condition for this opportunity that we're setting up is to alert the user when a new opportunity comes in. So we're going to do a new field value because it's going to have a new row. It's going to be on the CR opportunity because it's the table that all of that information with the opportunity is being stored on. Then we have the field name, which is the owner ID. And you can see here, I'll click through these so you can kind of get an idea. See, we have all the different tables that we just saw on the generic inquiry. Go back to tables, we have the tables. Then we have the field name, which is the specific field that we're looking at that's on. And I want to make sure that I'm giving you a visual as well as what options we're selecting. So coming here, field name, owner ID. We have owner. And then we have the owner ID, right, would be, and sometimes when you're going in and looking, it can get a little confusing. It's best to kind of look at the generic inquiry stage, or just kind of look in on here to find the owner ID as well. Here's the owner. And even though it's called owner, it is owner ID, because that's just owner ID is how the system kind of looks at it. So we have an owner ID, and then we want the condition is not empty. And the reason we want it to be not empty is because that means that something new has come in, it's been selected, and that we want it to trigger when it's when there's a value in there. So now that we've decided we have set up our event to then look at the new fields that come in from the owner IDs, we now know that Acumatica knows where to look on that business event to react. The next step, and I know I didn't cover this the first time because we did cover this earlier, but just kind of to bounce to cover it again, we have the trigger by record change here, and then for each record, because we wanted to send us email every time. And the shared filter is just the filter if you applied filters. Some of our clients like to have filters and quick switches here. That's if you wanted to just choose an already preset one, but we're going to keep all records here. For the subscriber, we're going to set up an email notification because we want the emails to go out to say, hey, a new opportunity is in the system. Please email and reach out to that the new contact in this case. So we're going to hit create new subscriber and email notification. And once you hit that, it's going to pop up with a new window. And then you'll see this might be a familiar window that you've seen before, which are notification templates. And that's where this will store the notification templates. And you can see here that I have it's going to autofill the new opportunity V2, or you can always change that. We're going to put the description in here. And it's really, really important that you're creating a notification template through the business event, just to make sure that they're linked properly together. Once that is set up, and you have started opening the new notification template, you'll see here that we have a from, and you should select that, and that's going to be your system email for this email. This is basically if you had different emails, you wanted to send different, have different notifications, send different emails from different system emails. This is how you can differentiate. Then we have the to, which is basically saying what is Acumatica looking at to send the email to. So here we know it's the CR opportunity as we discussed earlier. It's the owner, and then the default contact email of that owner. So if this, a lot of times when you're creating a business event, this may not show up, or it may be a little different, and you may have a bunch of different options. And these options are strictly pulling from that generic inquiry. So if you don't have the correct to option in this notification templates, chances are it just is because the column wasn't added on the generic inquiry, so the system can't recognize it. The system will only be looking at the options and the information that is present on that generic inquiry, not on the drill-in information. So if you open that opportunity in this case, and you saw all those other tabs and pieces of information, it won't see that. It will only see the data that's pulled on that generic inquiry. So that's really something that you have to remember when you are designing and creating these business events. Now that we have that selected, you can see it adds all the internal system information for what it's going to be selecting. So I'll just double click on that again. You can CC an email, and you can also even type emails in here and then separate them as you would in a normal Outlook. So if you'd like that, you could hard code them in there, or you can hard code an email if you'd like. Then you choose your subject. This is the subject of the email. And I know that I did select on an existing one, but the screen name will automatically be put in there because we created it through the business event. So that's why I suggest to create them through the business event screen rather than just trying to manually do it on separate screens and go directly to notification templates. Then you'll see in the below we have the option to choose what the message is going to be like. So you're probably wondering, what are these gray sections on my business event email? And that is the data fields that I want to be pulling every time that email is sent out. Because obviously with these emails is you want them tailored to the event, we want that information. So to get this information, and right here you can see we have the new opportunity, the opportunity name, which is the BA account name. We have the lead here for what the lead is the lead of the opportunity, the company name that the opportunity is associated with, the business account. To get all of this information, we're just going to be pulling it from our business event by going to Insert, Data Field, and you can see here we have all the original tables that we saw on our business event, right here. All these tables, and that this is all stemmed from our generic inquiry. So it's really, really important to make sure you have a strong generic inquiry. You don't want to have a lot of information on the generic inquiry. You want to just have the bare minimum. You can have a little bit extra, but it's really smart to keep it as simple as possible. So have these are all the tables that we saw. And then here you can expand them all individually and see all the different pieces of information from that generic inquiry that you want to be pulling into this email every single time. And you're probably wondering, how do we add additional fields and different pieces of data to grab? And the way that you go about doing that is just like with the To section, we're going to make sure that we have in the results grid the piece of information to display on the generic inquiry. Now it doesn't have to, like we saw earlier, it doesn't have to be visible, but it has to be available. And what I mean by that is if you go in to the generic inquiry and you go over here and you hide a section, so and see here we saw I hid the employee ID, the business event will still see it, but it has to be available in this selection tool on the selected columns. Once that is set up and you've decided, so all you do is just, in this case, double click owner ID. It will make it add all the different language that it needs to do, and you just type around it. And then this way, when a new opportunity is created, it will automatically email and fill in these individual sections with all of the data from each column on this generic inquiry. So a couple other things on here that's really, really neat is I did mention that I had an email to send automatic email reports through a different way, but you can also apply reports through the to be attached in the generic inquiry automation notification here as well. So you can see here I can hit plus, I can go to the report ID, and then these are all the individual reports that you could send. So in this case, let's just type in opportunity and see what we have a sales quote. It's just a printed, it's a printed form. I'll use this for an example. You can choose here what type of form and format you would like. You could do a PDF, you could do an HTML or Excel if you want this to be attached every single time. And then you have a couple options over on the right to set parameters. So the parameters are essentially the options that you are very accustomed to. So if we go to sales quote here, And we go to the printed forms. I'm just going to open this in a new tab. You can see that those two options that we just saw are right here. So you get to decide what parameters you would like to add automatically here, and you can choose the value, you can type it in there, or you can choose the value from the business event as well that's being pulled in. So it may seem a little overwhelming, but it's pretty straightforward on the aspect of if you get a little bit confused in what's being displayed, just take a step back, go to the screen that this is referring to, and look at the data as you would normally go through it. And then this way you can get a better idea of what it's asking for and what you need. And that's just something, a rule of thumb with all business events, is to really have multiple tabs. Use the ability to have multiple tabs in Acumatica. It's a phenomenal feature. It's one of my favorites. Part of this ERP is how you can have so many windows open, because you can really visualize what you're using. If the data is not there, go and look and see, is the data on that business event, and say to yourself, okay, well, I can't actually see it here, so probably Acumatica can't, and then go add that there. And if you do get stuck, we have this video being recorded, and I even have some other videos on adding generic inquiries that go in depth, or you could just email us directly, and we'd love to help you. Does anybody have any questions on how these business events are set up?
So there was one question that came in from the audience, and I'm going to answer it. I'm going to state it, and then I'm going to answer it, just because it was a unique one. So we actually had one client during this entire process go in and try to enable business events on their system, and they got an error message saying that they have to install MSMQ, Microsoft Message Queuing, on the server. Depending upon if you're locally installed or in the SaaS environment, you'll need to get us involved in that. If you're locally installed, Microsoft Message Queuing can be installed through the operating system. If you're in the SaaS environment, depending upon how long you've been on Acumatica, that might not be enabled automatically on your instance of Acumatica. So as a result, we just need to set up a support case with Acumatica on that. So if you go into business events and it does pop up that error message right away, just please send an email to our team here at Net-at-Work, Jason or myself, and we'll get a support case escalated. We'll get a support case escalated with Acumatica. A majority of our clients are on the SaaS version, so it might just be a matter of just enabling something on your instance. And again, depending upon how many years you've been using Acumatica, the person who sent me this one has been on Acumatica for about 7 years, so that it might not have never been initiated on their instance of their system.
And one last thing I wanted to jump into was the scheduler. I know that I did touch that in the beginning. The scheduler, when you check and change by trigger by schedule, this basically says that we're not going to look at record changes to reach out or do other events. We're just going to be by a strict schedule. So you just create schedule, and in here, you're going to set up your parameters of how often you'd like this schedule to run. Make sure that when you are setting this up that you always have no execution limit, otherwise it will only run once in the system. And then you would go in, set up your time, your execution, when it starts, how often. The conditions and values you generally don't need to touch, because it's going to be pulling and adding that. And the real key here is raise business event is the action name, and that only happens for the most part when you're creating this through the business event. So make sure you are really not jumping to other screens, going a roundabout way to get to the same screens that this business event screen brings you to. Go through the business event to keep it simple.
Awesome. So
Does anybody?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, does anyone else have any other questions?
Let me double check the queue here. Nope, we don't have any other questions at this time. So, Jason, I appreciate you. This was a lot of work putting this presentation together. I know it was just a 30-minute presentation, but I know that you spent many hours making sure that it was put together correctly and documenting everything, and appreciate the time you put into that. If there's any other questions, please feel free to put them in the questions chat. Otherwise, again, you have our contact information on the screen. We will be continuing on with our education series in the next couple weeks, like we always do, and planning on some additional training webinars throughout the end of the year. Also, as mentioned before, in 2 weeks, or in now in 13 days, on the 16th of September, there will be the Acumatica R2 release. So please attend that if you want to. It'll be a great way of meeting some of the executives virtually from Acumatica, as well as seeing all the really cool features in the 2020 R2 release. I just downloaded the PDF. It is 300 pages of new features and a lot of documentation. If anyone wants a copy of that, please let us know. It's 21 megs, so I might have to post it up on a link and send you the link, depending upon your email size restrictions. But there are a lot of new features in the 2020 R2 release. With that, also, if you're on 2019 R1, it is time to upgrade. Remember that Acumatica will support the current and the last two releases, and so 2020 R1 will be expiring when 2019 R1 will be expiring when 2020 R2 is released. So we'll be in touch with you if we have not already about getting those upgrades done. If you have any customizations, we'll obviously work with you on that. So a lot to go over, but a lot of definitely feel free to reach out to us here at NetAWork. And if there's any custom trainings that you want us to go over, please let us know. We'll be happy to do any type of training sessions for the entire group.
Thank you, everyone.